What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Dynasty Diehards. I know we haven't been on schedule the last couple weeks because we have been getting ready for the Reese's Senior Bowl. We have been here all week, boots on the ground, watching practices and tracking these players. I am joined by the one and only Omega King, the best ball king. He has been here watching and just taking it all in, right? And it's been a blast. We have Mike Valeri here from Campus to Canyon at FF_Dirty Mike on Twitter. Make sure you are following him on Twitter. And John Arrington, Dynasty Coach A, folks. We have been here, like I said, all week. We have been paying attention to all the players, watching, tearing it apart. And we're going to start here with the quarterbacks. Guys, this was terrible.
It's been rough.
It's been rough quarterback.
Okay, this is better than last year.
Okay, that's
by a long shot.
That's fair.
By
Fair
a long
point.
shot.
That's fair.
But it's been bad. But like it's I'm sorry. Last year, like they couldn't get the ball in the right spot. Like Clay 2 showed up through like 4 picks in a row. This might getting 4 picks in a row.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Right.
But I think I know for myself, and I think John, you agree, and I think pretty much everyone who's been at the practices would agree here. With Penix and Nix, like we expected a certain level of quarterback, right? We expected a certain level of being impressed, right? Or something like
Yeah.
we expected
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
These are two
Sure.
top prospects. These are guys who were in the college football playoffs. You expected more from them. Mike, let's start with you. What did you think of Penix? Overall, like watching this week, what was your biggest takeaway of watching Michael Penix at practice at the Senior Bowl?
Both these quarterbacks, Penix specifically, are like system QBs. They run a specific system. It's Pac-12 football. They don't have a strong schedule. Obviously, he did down the stretch. But generally speaking, like his regular season schedule is not strong. So taking him out of his system, got to see if we can see anything more besides what we saw. Like those kind of main factor there. I don't think he wants to operate out of structure. He never really was that type of quarterback.
Right.
The mobility that we saw at like Texas was just fluky, and I think everyone knew that too. And just not an all-platform thrower. So.
Right. Now, John, I want to ask you, with Bo Nix, I know he's someone that you were really looking forward to seeing this week. What was your takeaway from him? Where does he go in the draft now? What did he do to his draft stock this week at the Senior Bowl? I mean, all of the executives are here. Head coaches, we had GMs. Everyone was paying attention. What did you think of Bo Nix?
I mean, honestly, I've always been lower on Nix. So, my whole thing is that you look at the IAY, intended air yards, ADOT, whatever the hell you want to call it. He just doesn't push the ball down the field. And what have we seen all week? He doesn't push the ball down the field. Nothing changed. Like, if I get their schemes and everything, so if you want to blame the scheme, that's fine. But now you need to come to Senior Bowl and actually make that change.
Right.
And he didn't do it.
Right.
So, as far as like what the NFL draft is going to do, that's never something. That's not my strong suit. Honestly, Mike's pretty good at it. That's never been my strong suit. I'm just telling you, I've never been a Bo Nix fan, and I'm still not a Bo Nix fan after this week.
So you didn't do anything to change your mind?
Correct.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Omega, I want to ask you, is there anything you think he can do now that we're past the Senior Bowl, pro days, combine, that can help Nix elevate his draft stock over where he is now?
I don't know if there's anything you can do at this point. I just gotta hope the team likes what he does and fit their system, like they were saying.
Yeah.
To be really important in the NFL. I don't know if he's gonna do much year one. Him and Penix probably not much in late round.
Nix could be a pretty good backup, honestly.
Both of them.
Yeah, and Penix. Yeah, both of them. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that either one of them are more than that. I would maybe say that Penix is a high-end backup, whereas Nix is more of like a high-end fantasy backup. So you're kind of looking at two different things, where like Nix might be better for fantasy purposes if you were like if all of a sudden he gets on the field because we have 64 QBs touch the field again like we did last year, however many it was, 67, whatever. Whereas Penix is probably better for NFL purposes, but like Mike was saying, he's not going to run. We even saw some runs today and yesterday and everything. Those aren't going to be runs in the NFL.
NFL athletes are going to shut that down.
Yeah, and
Well, I think that's something we took away. And my biggest takeaway from Penix this week was he doesn't operate well under pressure. He's not a pocket passer, which is fine. The NFL is
He's not a pocket runner.
He's not a pocket runner either. And I think that's ultimately the problem. Is we're looking at a dude who's mid-athletic. He doesn't do anything super well. He got by at Washington. He got by in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
He's not going to get by in the NFL. His skill set just isn't going to play. Now, surprising this week, Tulane quarterback Michael Pratt kind of showed out a little bit.
Sure.
He might have been the most consistent quarterback this week. Omega, I'll ask you first. Do you think that is he a top, like, I don't know, 5-round pick?
I don't know.
First 5 rounds? Is he a guy we're looking like, is this a Mr. Irrelevant who maybe got himself into the draft by showing out here at the Senior Bowl?
I'd be more inclined to the last part, irrelevant. It's just so hard for the smaller schools, quarterbacks and stuff like that to really get drafted that high, to really make a difference.
Yep, fair enough. Now, the other quarterback that I think is actually interesting this week, for many reasons, is Joe Milton. His presence as a human being, I think he impressed a lot of people with his composure and his attitude and his willingness to seemingly try and learn things. But we saw the same thing we've seen all season from him. He can bomb the ball downfield, guys. He cannot execute those touch passes.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it repeatedly this week on the screens. He was floating stuff. Do you think he can? Is that something he can work on, or is this what Milton is going to be? And he's going to be a guy who maybe gets a shot in the NFL because he's so athletic, which just doesn't pan out.
It's so tough to ask a fifth-year player to grow more in the NFL. I mean, NFL coaches have kind of gone out of their way to say that they don't really coach or teach at this level.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're already saying that this guy's been playing in college for 5 years, and now we want him to become better. And it just doesn't really happen that often. Honestly, one of the only times it's probably happened is Josh Allen. And then people want to say, oh, well, this is the next Josh Allen. And it just doesn't happen again. So, I do not think it'll happen. The only thing you can really say is obviously, like, the rest of the quarterbacks are fairly short. And so he stands out from the rest just because of his height, size, athleticism, like things like that. They do stand out. Arm strength, all that kind of stuff does stand out for Joe Milton. The problem is he's just the rawest of raw after 5 years of college, and that's really difficult.
That is really difficult. Now, one more quarterback we're going to talk about. We're going to move on to running backs here. Spencer Rattler. The guy was, he was a consensus the top quarterback in the past, and now we're looking at a guy who's in South Carolina. He didn't really up his stock. Did he up his stock this week, Mike? I mean, did you see enough out of Spencer Rattler where you feel like maybe he's a viable starter in the NFL, or is this just another guy who's going to maybe get drafted high and kind of flame out?
I don't know how to answer your question of his stock. I don't know if the draft community really catches up to the NFL community until about a month before the NFL draft.
Sure.
But no, I don't think this guy we're seeing the NFL. He is he's a project. But like what he was seeing out there, like he was making the correct reads, but then acting upon like 2 milliseconds too late. Throws were late, holds onto the ball too long, and took some sacks in there too. So it's
ugly picks.
it's the same old with him. It's just everything's too late. But I think he sees it. It's just no. I think maybe it's a mental game thing for him.
Sure.
And I think that's a little bit easier said to fix than done. But another guy's got the tools, so if you can make the tools argument, you're getting drafted no matter what. So I'm sure he still has that for him. But as far as working out, like, I don't know. Too confident.
All right. Now I'm going to go around real quick. We're just do this real quick, spitfire very fast. Top quarterback at the Senior Bowl. Omega, let's start with you.
I guess I'll stick with Bo Nix. I don't know if any of them are super far above everybody else, but I think he lands the right spot. He can at least make the regular throws, that what you have to make.
Okay. Mike, who's your top quarterback?
Michael Pratt. I think he had a lot of the tools, showed some good things too. The issues that he did make today, like the problems, were I think simple fixes. Like we talked about with Milton and other stuff, it's kind of like a really elongated stuff. For Pratt, it was like stuff that's just like reps. You just need reps and proper coaching. So I think it's great.
John.
I liked what Pratt did. I've never been the biggest Pratt fan. I feel like if I had to choose one, I would probably say Penix, but it really is not that far off from the others. Not that he's that much better or anything. He did that much better this week. And honestly, like when it all is said and done, I really believe that they're all NFL backups. And you could really make the argument that any one of them is fine. And you could say, like, oh, if he fits in this scheme, even like Bo Nix, like I'm not the biggest fan, but like if he goes to a certain scheme and then he becomes a starter, he might be able to score some points for you, like that kind of thing. Whereas, like Pratt can probably do the same thing. So like they all kind of have their fit, but I really feel like they're all NFL backups. Well, I don't see them being.
And you just touched on the conversation we had a lot this week. And watching this quarterback play, we're looking at a class full of guys who are essentially backup level NFL players. We're not looking at quarterbacks who are going to change anything. They're not going to be franchise winning quarterbacks. They're not going to be league winning quarterbacks. So keep that in mind. I'm with you, Mike. I think Michael Pratt won the week. He was the most efficient quarterback. He was the cleanest quarterback. He didn't make nearly as many mistakes as all the other guys did. And he was hitting his throws.
Sure.
And as you pointed out, He was the first one on the field for national practice day.
Yeah.
So that does mean something. Like, the guy's hungry, and you can tell. Now we're going to move on to running backs, and I'm going to start out with the guy who I was really excited about coming into the Senior Bowl, and I think he just made me more excited. This is deep, and we talk about small school pedigree can be a problem sometimes heading into the NFL. They're not facing that top-end competition like the SEC schools, but I really, really like Dylan Lowry out of New Hampshire. He showed up against really good competition. The defensive competition this week was phenomenal. We're not going to get into that. We're not an IDP show. But the defenses showed out this week, and Lowry looked really good, and he did it all. One of the things that impressed me the most about him was his ability to run the go routes out of the backfield. And he's able to beat corners on those go routes. Not the best size, but he finds ways to win. He was my favorite. Omega, who was your favorite running back this week?
I go with Ray Davis. He wasn't someone I was really
Good name.
paying attention to before, but seeing him here, someone I'm going to be paying attention to now.
Yes, sir.
Ray Davis is someone you mentioned a lot this week, but who was your absolute favorite back at the Senior Bowl?
It actually was also Ray Davis here. Kentucky's offense struggled this year. It just couldn't get it going. But watching him get all his pass catching reps and winning 1v1 against linebackers, doing that one-handed grab, I didn't even know if he could even do that. So I think he can be a change case back next level. He's not like a zero in the run game. He can run down the middle.
Sure.
Long speed's not his thing, but short yardage should not be a problem for him.
Right. Now, John, I'm pretty sure I know who yours is because we've been talking about it for 2 days. And I'm okay with it because he's my second favorite, but I want to hear you talk about him.
Honestly, I think it's Marshawn Lloyd. I really think that, he was the most consistent at the very least of any of the players. You always saw him finishing plays, which, they all kind of did, but half the time it would be like they get tackled because they're not like doing full-on tackling, and then they would finish the play. You really didn't see that with Marshawn. It would just be like he would just continue the play, and he would just finish it because they didn't tackle him, even though they're not truly tackling, that kind of thing. So I really thought, he did everything. I also interviewed him for about 7 minutes, and I'll tell you what, like he answered the questions perfectly, whether he's coached up or not.
Right.
I loved his personality. I loved his answers. I loved his attitude. I loved all that kind of stuff. You add all that together, add in the college production, I really fell in love with Marshawn Lloyd even more this week.
So it's interesting that you mentioned him because something that I loved coming into this week and I was really excited to see, and this is what's great about the Senior Bowl, because you're getting these guys out of their system where they've been kind of like pigeonholed or tunneled into whatever their system is. Marshawn Lloyd just simply didn't get used in the passing game. And he stated coming into the Senior Bowl this week, something he wanted to do was to showcase his ability to be a pass-catching back. The way he runs wheel routes, he's phenomenal out of the backfield.
Yeah.
And I think that we really got to see that out of him this week. I think he may have upped his capital out of all the running backs the most. But someone I was also excited about, and I kind of thought maybe you were going to talk about him as well, is Kamani Vidal.
Yeah.
Another small school guy who's out of Troy. But again, he did the thing that he needed to do this week to show NFL teams. He's a pass-catching back, guys. And he did it very well. But he did everything else well. Little guy, big heart, big dreams. Oh man, what do you think of Kamani Vidal? Small school pedigree, that's always a concern. But do you think he has enough to, or did he show enough this week to maybe up his capital and get a shot?
It's so hard to tell with the smaller school.
Yeah.
Kind of have to look at production, see what they did in the past. But showing out here at the Senior Bowl definitely helps. It's not there's people, several, going back the last few Senior Bowls, there's always a couple people that show out and
he might have shown out as the best receiver, or at least the best routes. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but he was running hard, he was cutting hard, he was beating linebackers, beating corners, all that kind of stuff. Caught every single ball. I don't know if he had a drop. He did have one. I think he had a fumble and on a run at the end of today's practice. I don't even know if he actually fumbled it. I think he ended up with it, but as far as the receptions and the routes and all that good stuff, it was pristine. I also interviewed him 3 times, so I'm what best he's at this point. So I absolutely love Kamani. I can't have him ahead of Marshawn. I really can't.
Sure.
But I really do. The guy put up almost 2,000 yards this past season. Right. Obviously at a lower level competition, but he's kind of proving that he belongs at the very least.
Sure. Now, Mike, was there anybody else in this running back group that really stood out to you as someone who maybe like really upped their capital this week?
Yeah,
Or
Cody Schrader, which he's on the Heisman ballot. Same number of votes as JJ McCarthy, by the way. But Cody Schrader, that's one vote, by the way.
I feel like that was a shot at me, but
No, I really thought Cody Schrader was an old school, gritty, kind of flyer type running back, which is always a lot of fun to watch at the college level because you can kind of just out athlete people and that's just fine. But at the Senior Bowl here with these NFL future athletes here and a lot of high draft level guys, he did pretty well. He was moving well and much faster footwork than I thought. Certainly not a plot or tag anymore. I know my personal grades, he was like a 6th, 7th rounder. I'm moving him up. I think all these guys are day 3 guys. For the most part, everyone I kind of outperformed my expectations. I thought this was not an exciting RB group. And I think I came with all of them being instead of being a depth piece guy that we're going to forget about after a year, come next Senior Bowl. I thought most of these guys can carve out their rotational role.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, with Schrader, he did really show out. I mean, you could every time it was oh, that's Schrader, oh, that's Schrader. But I felt like every run was to the outside. I don't know that he can actually do inside runs.
well, with his size, he's 5'7".
Yeah,
So-
of course. Yeah.
Well, they're all short.
Yeah, they're almost
they are
like
short.
4 or 5
He's
7
just that
5.
guy.
Yeah.
He works well outside.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. And John, I felt like yesterday specifically, every time you looked up, it was Cody Schrader in the national practice running down the field.
Yeah.
Anytime there was any
On the outside.
On the outside, of course.
Yeah.
But he did it, and he did it well. I'm with you on Schrader. I
Yeah.
loved watching him play. I thought he really helped his draft stock. Omega, was there anybody that you really just kind of love that you think maybe really is going to get in front of scouts now that maybe wasn't going to get drafted in this running back group?
I don't know. Y'all took all the good ones.
Say Michael Wiley.
I'll say Michael Wiley for John here.
We love it. We love it. All right. Well, now that we've gone through the running backs, what might be one of the most important position groups in fantasy football, if you're not playing IDP, is wide receivers. And this class is phenomenal. And there are guys, obviously we've got Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., who are at the top of this class. But then we've got a lot of guys here at the Senior Bowl who they can creep up into that first round if they show out at the combine, if they have good pro days, plus what they did in the Senior Bowl. I'm not saying they necessarily will. Mike, let's start with you. What receiver in this Senior Bowl upped their stock the most with their performance in practices these last 3 days?
Oh, man, upped it the most. I'm gonna say Roman Wilson. Not just to be clear, that's not the guy who had the best week though. But I think he might have upped his the most. I don't think he was considered much of a day 2 or even considered that. He was most efficient off the line, very quick. There wasn't much flashiness to his game, just efficient and then just one. And the other real question I had about it too, and I talked to other guys too, was just, is he a body catcher? Because Jaden probably wasn't on the ball. They weren't playing the ball up in Michigan, but they're just running the ball the whole time. So we got limited exposure to Roman Wilson during the hard part of their schedule. So seeing him go against these corners, it was kind of reaffirming what we thought he could be.
Yeah.
On top of that too, it wasn't just 5 catches because that's ball plays from Jason McCarthy. We actually got to see him do extension grabs and stuff like that. So I think Roman Wilson might have solidified 3rd round draft capital, but I definitely think he answered a lot of questions.
I love his comeback routes. He was so quick, and then the deceleration, everything. I loved everything about it.
His footwork was.
Yeah,
I'm a big footwork guy, just to be clear, and I think that's really important for receivers, especially early on in routes. It's how you create separation. It's something he does very well.
Yeah.
Omega, I want to ask you: is there a wide receiver in this group that you think maybe should be on more people's radar that isn't even after these 3 days of practice?
Yeah, I'll stick with my guy Cohen here. He's a small guy, but and he got hurt a little bit on
yeah, he got carted off pretty early.
Yes, he did.
He had 3 catches before that, so he was starting off for a good day.
right.
And then I believe he hurt his foot or something. He
kind of
limped off, and then they carted him off.
kind of a non-existent week for him here, but he was really good for me in C2C and watching him in Debbie.
Yeah.
So, but that's going to be one I'm going to continue to, at least through the draft, I'm going to continue to try to root
Gotcha.
for and handle.
I love it. Now, John, I want to ask you: who was your favorite receiver these last 2 days?
I'm not gonna lie.
It doesn't have to be best. I just want to know favor.
I'm gonna say none of them. I really felt like I'm gonna say that I honestly don't feel like anyone truly stood out.
I love this.
And because they're in day one, everyone was losing their mind about Lad McConkey against like 1v1s.
Yep.
And then he went up against 11 on 11, and he was getting destroyed by corners, like press corners. He was getting destroyed on the line. And then we saw Johnny Wilson making some moves. He actually looked pretty fluid. He looked pretty quick for a giant man.
Right.
And then, he was kind of making, he wasn't running the routes the greatest. He wasn't, he wasn't doing all these things. He wasn't catching the ball, of course. Tez Walker was running some of the best routes that I've seen. And then he was doing these concentration drops. And I don't know if it's just like a nervousness or whatever.
Sure.
Like he's on this big stage. He knows it could literally be the difference between first round draft capital and third or fourth or whatever. But at this point, we have to question what our team's going to say, because they're going to look and they're going to say he was getting open at will, but yet he couldn't actually hold on to the ball. And he made a couple good catches and everything. Honestly, I think just because he was getting open at will, I would leave it at Tez.
Okay.
But I don't feel like that would be like the consensus answer, because people were seeing him drop the ball, and that's like no one ever wants to see that. But my whole thing has always been, can you get open? He can get open.
He was getting open vertically, and that was something that he wasn't doing necessarily so much on Tuesday. He did on Wednesday and Thursday. And seeing that growth and that progression against this defense was fantastic. So I'm with you. I really loved what I was.
He's probably the fastest wide receiver.
Oh, he's insanely fast
at the very least. Yeah, he probably is. So you add all that together, he's probably still going to be drafted early and all that.
Sure.
And that's why I'm like, I'll call him winning the week.
Sure.
I really, truly feel like no one won the week. Everyone had like, oh, you had this really good series, and you had this, and you had that, and you could name like 6 different wide receivers, but they all kind of fell off at points as well.
Well, I think a player that highlights this on top of Tez Walker is Xavier Leggett, because Tuesday he was bad. And we had a lot of we thought that he was coming in. I had compared him to AJ Brown light, obviously, but like that body frame and the way that he plays.
Sure.
We didn't see it on Tuesday. Then we saw it on Wednesday. And our buddy Herms got a video of like one of the most amazing freaking catches in that practice. And it was ridiculous. Go to @HermsNFL and check out that video of Xavier Leggett. It's a dope catch.
Better video than
video.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, like, not to take anything away from Xavier, but like, I honestly think the DB just ran past him more than anything else.
Well,
he still had to like make it.
He made an
adjustment. He made an athletic catch, but like the DB literally just ran past him.
Yeah, but a hell of an athletic catch. I really liked what I saw out of Leggett the last 2 days. I'm not saying he's a world beater by any means.
He's just
he's
a
solid
runner. He's a fast guy that can run down the field. If you get the right kind, if you get like a Justin Herbert or something, like what they wanted Quentin Johnston to be, maybe like you could make it work. But I mean, I don't know that he's ever going to be like a true one or anything like that. That's the problem.
Okay, so we'll start with you here. Are there any wide receivers in this wide receiver group, the Senior Bowl, that have a shot at being a wide receiver 1-tier fantasy asset at any point in their career, whether it's rookie season or year 5? Or year 10. I mean, wide receivers don't get to year 10, but unless they're Jerry Rice. Who was here today?
I don't think so. Just being honest.
That's fair.
I mean, Mike, anybody here you think is a wide receiver 1 caliber talent?
It's a pretty heavy no, unless it's like, I'm saying sorry to myself. Unless it's like a Patriot situation where they're just starved of talent and it's going to be in the slot.
Okay,
that's about it. But on a normal trade roster, the answer is no.
But is that answer Lad McConkey in the right situation?
It's Lad and Roman in the right
situation. Okay.
Yeah, you got to add that little add-on in
the right situation. Yeah, and that's not. And honestly, we found most of the time that doesn't happen. Everyone wants it to happen, and then you get the JSN on Seattle, and you get the Zach Charbonnet on Seattle. Everyone goes to Seattle. Yeah,
it's all a Seattle thing.
So now you're going to get Lad McConkey to Seattle.
Right? Or even worse, he's going to go to Pittsburgh, where Arthur Smith is now the offensive coordinator.
Yep.
Herms, I'm sorry, buddy. I love you. And I'm a Steelers fan too, and it hurts. Arthur Smith, Why? I don't know.
Najee season.
Najee for 3
Okay,
yards.
so this isn't rookie related, but I'm going to ask this question now that we're talking about it. Who's a worse offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith or Matt Canada? John, go.
I'll go with Canada.
Yeah.
I'll go with Canada. I mean, honestly, like Arthur Smith wasn't the worst offensive coordinator, and I think that, but I Herm's is cracking up.
We've got Herms in the beat.
Yeah.
Herms is running our back end.
Actually, he might be crying in tears of happiness and tears of joy, but
This makes me so sad.
Arthur Smith, I feel like got caught up in the Derrick Henry like sweepstakes.
Yeah.
And like once you have Derrick Henry, it ruins you. Just like some of the conversations we had this weekend, with like people getting ruined, and it ruins you. Like you think that every other player you can turn into Derrick Henry because you had Derrick Henry, and you can't do that.
Right.
And even like you have someone as amazing as Bijan Robinson, but he doesn't run like Derrick Henry. He doesn't do the things that Derrick Henry does. He does other things much better,
Right.
and some things much worse. But you want him to be like Derrick Henry, and so like, but I feel like Matt Canada was just not the right fit at all. So
Mike, Canada or Smith?
Smith. Smith was pretty good with the Titans. You know, like they didn't have a lot of weapons there. He made the most of what he got. Just proved to be a terrible head coach. I think.
Yeah,
sure.
And that's
Which we've seen
my
a
very.
million times over.
And then with Matt Canada, if you got a kicker calling you out, like it's bad.
That was, I love that.
I mean, like
I
you
love
can't.
Boswell.
Like, as much as we hate in the fantasy community, hate Arthur Smith, I don't think we ever really heard like the locker room turning on him or anything like that. Like, and so, even like Bijan was getting like 8 touches a game. You never once heard Bijan going like, I hate my life. This is the worst thing ever. Trade me right now or anything like that. Even Drake London, like any of those guys, none of them are like, we hate Arthur Smith. We all hate Arthur Smith.
Sure.
We can say he's terrible. But
No, I mean-
sometimes a coach is the most important thing for a coach is just keeping the locker room, keeping that. Like look at Mike Tomlin. Speaking of
That's a good point.
of the
That's a very good
Steelers,
point.
like that team is just hideous, and yet
He
you
goes
have
9-8.
they're going to go to the playoffs
Goes
every
9-8.
single year,
Every year.
and it's almost to a detriment. But you can at least say, hey,
Sure.
we appreciate the fact that he's that freaking good
Yeah.
that he can take them, he can get this cohesive unit out of a bunch of players that kind of hate each other or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. Shout out Mike Tomlin, who was here this week and was super
And
awesome.
we parked directly
We
next
did
to him.
park directly
We
next
did
to
not
him.
get to talk to him,
Didn't
but
get
we
to talk
were
to him.
parked next to him.
But no, we did, because we've had a great time here. This has been an absolute blast last 3 days. We've got 2 more left. We are going to be here for the actual game. I don't know if there's validity to that. But we're going to definitely analyze
We're gonna watch
You guys more. We're going to watch it. We're going to be there. But before that, let's get into the tight ends. Now, this is the worst position group to grade in all of fantasy football. We all know that.
Yeah.
Tight ends are incredibly difficult, and it's a very fickle position. Is there anybody who was here this weekend that you think is a top 12 fantasy tight end in 2024 or beyond at all? Omega, go. No.
No.
Mike?
Nope.
No, I know. I was just gonna say no and then let Mike elaborate.
No, there's no way.
because
You're talking so much. You're not talking. Sorry. There's no way. There's no talking.
he loved. I don't know about loves. But
Oh, I was a
he
fan.
loved Ben Sanat.
Me too.
And we actually had this conversation on the Debbie Devotional
Yes.
where he almost wanted to push him ahead of another. I'm not trying to call him out, so I'm not going to
Okay.
name the player because like it's a little embarrassing now. But I will say, like he proved at least my concerns that he's not athletic enough to be a tight end in today's NFL. Like there was a different day and age where maybe he would have been great. Now you have to be athletic as hell. You have to be able to run all the same routes that the wide receivers can run. I mean, and honestly, I'll give the Senior Bowl credit. Like they don't even like differentiate. They're basically just like, you're a wide receiver in these drills. You're a wide receiver and you're going to run the same routes. You're going to do the same exact things.
Yeah.
And they always look funky as hell, but they
Well, they
do
do
the
it.
same things.
Yep.
They all look different. It was not the same thing. They couldn't get open. They couldn't do that. None of them are athletic.
Yes.
enough, I don't believe.
Well, and I think one of the things that frustrated me the most is I was a big fan of Sinnott too. Coming into the Senior Bowl, like I was really looking forward to seeing him and seeing what he could do with his reps, and his hands just weren't there. And I think that was the most glaring thing. Some of those drops were so egregious where it was they weren't contested, He created separation, he was open, and he was dropping the ball. If he had to create any extension to make a catch, he couldn't do it. And for a tight end and a guy that size, that's something you have to be able to do. Theo Johnson was decent. He was fast, at least this week. I mean,
I will admit, like, if you talk to anyone about a tight end, or even not necessarily even about a tight end, but Theo Johnson got brought up a lot. So if we were going to name somebody, it would probably be Theo Johnson. I don't really think he's a thing, but like, I guess if there was going to be a surprise in the draft or something, it would probably be Theo Johnson.
If you're looking at who did the worst and you graded from like the bottom up, I think Theo's at the top. Like he wasn't consistent, but he like showed some nice flashes. Like he really did show some nice flashes.
Yeah.
So the potential is there, and that was kind of like his profile coming into college anyway. So it's kind of the same old like being like no, you feel like can't be the old dog. You know,
Sure.
And so it's kind of like that too. So I like to imagine, and I talked to him, and I wish I asked him, but I wonder if he's going up to the NFL level a little bit earlier than I thought he should have because he's not getting the coaching at Penn State. I wonder if he just thinks he can get it next level.
That's an interesting point, but it could be.
But as far as being an athlete, I think he's probably the best athlete and the best mobile.
And that's probably why, in an inconsistent position, he was the most consistent. And it's probably because of athleticism. Because, like I said, there's really not too much athleticism with the rest of these guys. And you say that, I mean, like you can say Vincent I got open. I don't know, like he wasn't getting open
he was getting open enough to where he should have been catching the ball. I think it was mostly my point.
Yeah.
And especially for a tight end that size, like, and that was something, and this is a point I wanted to bring up. We saw it in the wide receiver groups. We saw it in the tight end groups. These big dudes who are not using their size to their advantage to win routes. They're just not doing it. So that was one of my biggest takeaways. Like, do we need a size use coach for these guys at the Senior Bowl, right? Because one that really frustrated the absolute hell out of me were two of them. Johnny Wilson, who doesn't use his size to his advantage.
Not at all.
And Brevin Spanford, the tight end out of Minnesota. He's 6'7". Standing next to him at media day yesterday, I felt like a freaking shrimp. Use your size, guys.
Yeah.
If you're a prospect watching this, or you're a kid who might be playing high school football, use your size.
But it also makes it easier. Like it's easier to evaluate. At points in their college career, I liked Johnny Wilson, and it became obvious that he doesn't use his size, and he really has like a concentration drop problem and all.
And we saw a lot of that
as well. And he dropped a lot of balls. He ran some crappy routes and stuff like that. He's more fluid than you would expect a 6'6" wide receiver to be. And, there haven't been too many 6'6" wide receivers that actually work in the NFL. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I feel like, once again, he would have to work on so much stuff to truly be a wide receiver that while I like him and he flashes in certain departments, he's never put it all together.
All right, guys, well, we're going to go ahead and round this out here, but we're going to go around the room here real quick, and I want to know everyone's favorite player from these last 3 days of practice. We're going to start with the man behind the camera here, Mr. Hearns NFL. Shout out, who's your favorite player this week at the Senior Bowl?
Shout out the wide receiver, the Ryan Fornoy from the small school. He was very nice, and I thought he was cool.
And he played well. He did show out, and he kind of showed up today, too. Like, he was very impressed. So, Ryan Fornoy, guys, that's a name to look for. Omega, who you got?
I hope I'm not stealing Mike Scott, but I'll take Ray Davis.
I love it. All right, so we got a vote for Ray Davis. Mike, give it to us.
Michael Pratt. I think he's got all the tools to be a starting NFL QB, and it's not going to be immediate, but like the fixes are minimal. And I think teams are going to find a very easy project, not a heavy project, but an easy project to get taken care of when we get Michael Pratt. And he's not priced highly right now, so
yes,
I think that's going to be great.
Fantastic. We love it. Michael Pratt. John, who you got?
Honestly, I think it's going to be Marshawn Lloyd, like I said before. If you want like my actual favorite player from the weekend that I think could maybe rise in drafts, even if it's only incremental or whatever you want to call it, would be Kamani Vidal. Like you were, kind of saying before. I kind of have like a solid. I told you before, like I want to adopt him. I love him so much. Like I talked to him all week long, and I love him to death. But man, I'll tell you what, he's 5'7", okay? And people are going to look at that and they're going to say, he can't be an NFL running back. But he is a rocked up 5'7". Like, he is not a small human being.
No, he's not.
At all. And honestly, he's got like a little like puff of hair on top of his head. He's like 5'10" with the hair. So, I mean, it's not even that bad, you know?
Well, and it's interesting that you say that because when I did my film notes on Kamani Vidal, one of the things that I noted, and it's one of my main big notes, is he plays well above his size. So I love that call. I'm kind of torn between Xavier Leggett, because I love what I saw the last 2 days. I think that he has the opportunity. I think he could be a wide receiver too, a consistent wide receiver too in the NFL. And Kamani Vidal, because I love what I saw out of that kid. And you love the heart from the small dude who plays above his size.
His routes were just so crisp. Like, I don't know if he'll ever actually be a thing in the NFL, but I'll tell you what, like, he gave me some promise. Like, he showed me some promise this week. So.
Well, he might not be a thing in the NFL, but he's a thing in our hearts, right? We'll always have this week.
I probably
At the
adopt him. He's
Senior
going to be a
Bowl-
thing in my life for the rest of my life.
He probably will be. I mean, I adopt him. Bring him home. Bring him home. Guys,
Kamani Harrison sounds pretty good.
He's
Yeah, I
throw
like
the ball.
it.
You can't adopt it from the ball.
Kamani Coach A,
That's
you know?
have you not watched The Blind Side? Come on, man. Come on.
That's got to go to the Sunday contract
Yeah.
too.
20 years old.
It'll be all right.
Exactly. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Dynasty Diehards. We give you all of our Senior Bowl reactions. We have a ton more, so make sure you are following us on Twitter at FFDinoDiehards. You can find me at Nate Polvogt. You can find my co-host Matt Chester at FFMadJester. We've got Omega Keith. We have got Mike Valeri. We've got John Arrington. Guys, check the show notes. All of their twiddle handers. It's been a long week. We have been barbecuing. We've been having whiskey. I am tired. Twitter handles are in the show description, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Dynasty Diehards, and we will see you next week. Cheers, fellas.
Cheers.